Hello, I'm Stephen Fry, and I have just finished a rather handsome and delightful gig. I've read Sir Tim Berners-Lee's memoir, This Is For Everyone, and I'm now sitting with Sir Tim, and we're going to have a chat about the book. I wanted to ask you first, Tim, was there a spark that inspired you to write the book now? Was there something you felt made it the right time for this?
Good question. I think so much has happened over the time of the web, of the growing of the web, but now maybe AI happening suddenly has put everything into different focus. Everything, which was so important during the growth of the web. Now it's the need for an AI that respects us is I suppose, part of the motivation.
There's a sense in which you could say AI has eaten the web. You know, people use words like scrape and crawl for the way AI gets its data, but it's eaten the web. Even today, I read an article saying how inquiries on the web about health have dropped precipitously in the last 6 months because, of course, everyone is now using a chat model. But it was implying that's no longer using the web, but of course the chat models use the web.
Right. There's another layer. Well, those people who remember the web before Google, they felt that to a certain extent the web died with Google because you used to have to keep your bookmarks and you used to keep things to follow. You used to follow links, to follow and then links disappeared. Everybody used a search engine, and now they've moved from using a search engine to using chat.
Yeah, there's a sort of rhythm in technology that has been repeated time and time again, where there's extraordinary excitement about a new invention. You might say, if we were standing and looking at Newcomen or James Watt and we saw their steam engines working for the first time, we would have a romantic, idealistic view of this beautiful thing. But then, 100 years later, there are northern cities choked with soot, children dying of rickets, contamination in the waterworks of pollution, and the dark side of a huge industrial revolution is revealed that has to be sorted out by another 100 years of politics. And the same, you could argue, has happened with the idealistic beginnings of your World Wide Web, of, from Turing onwards, the excitement, and from William Shockley onwards, the excitement of electronics. But now we can say there's a pollution and a contamination in our rivers of discourse, similar to the one that the Industrial Revolution gave us, and that children are choking, and that the dark side of Silicon Valley has been revealed. And yet what I found reading your book is, although you don't shy away from the fact that this is facing humanity, you're an optimist. And I wonder why and where this optimism comes from.
I think, is it because I'm just born an optimist? No, I don't think so. I think it's because of the situation it gives me optimism. It gives me a hope that actually things will be, that, for example, the people I'm working with on the new projects about building a social media which are actually pro-human, for example, those people, the spirit of the collaboration, the sparkle in their eyes when they think about the world we could build, when they think about a world where we get rid of the worst part of the web and promote the best part of it, that gives me hope. So I'm an optimist, and so the book is an optimistic book.
Right. And of course, it does come down to people. I'm so glad you said that, the people you're working with, because throughout your book, it's interesting. You meet, obviously, lots of people. And some of them, one can't help it. You don't yourself call them villains exactly, but you report what happened. I'm not going to name names, but there's a young figure who was obviously pretty brilliant in his way, who was at Chicago University, whom you found when he was still a student, and he built out one of the very first web browsers that then became huge. Now he's a giant figure in the world of venture capitalism and a sort of senior prophet for the greatness of AI. And you can see that he is, if you like, not the kind of idealist, not the kind of open-minded figure, not the kind of humane figure that you have consistently been. And we can look at all the figures, the giant tech bros or whatever we call them, and we can see that mixture of the idealists, those who, wore T-shirts and jeans, have now turned into kind of capitalists with cigars in the cartoon sense of it. In George Orwell terms, the pigs are wearing trousers now. That the revolutionaries have become, and yet you've kept this idealism. You've kept this openness. Have you found lots of obstacles in the way, both temptation to make more money and be more powerful, which you've clearly avoided, but also simply the kind of desire to own and control the way things work, to be centralized rather than distributed in information network speak?
Well, I suppose for 30 years or so, I've by running the Web Consortium, this organization where all these different companies come together to agree that there should be one web.
Yeah.
That was in a way a form of power. The consortium had power because even however big each company was, they realized that the web was bigger than all of them, and so in a way, so there was a certain amount of power in the consortium and in all the collaboration that happened around that.
Yeah, you were settling the laws and protocols and so on.
That for many years was, in fact, and so I may not have had a lot of sort of power in the capitalist sense of money, but I've had power in the sense of influence. I've got to meet all kinds of interesting people, and so there's
one very interesting person you didn't meet. I think it's one of the great cute not meet stories in history. Perhaps the two most influential figures of the late 20th century, Sir Tim Berners-Lee and Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs, just to remind people, he had been sacked from the company he co-founded and had gone off to start up his own computer company called Next. And it was on one of those machines that you wrote the program that became the World Wide Web. And you wanted to show him the code. Can you tell this story? Because it makes me shiver every time I think of it.
So there we were in France, I think, at a Next development conference, and so with a bunch of people who had projects to show Steve Jobs, and we were, or each one got a table in this room, and we set up the World Wide Web.
And there it was, the most valuable piece of code that had ever been written.
Well, and it was running on a computer that Steve Jobs he said we must do interpersonal computing. It's not personal computing, it's about interpersonal computing. So he was obviously thinking along the same sort of lines. And there was Steve Jobs politely talking to each of the projects in turn. And then before he got to us, somebody came and whispered something in his ear, and he went off. He was called away.
He never saw it?
So he never saw it.
And you never met him?
He was inches away.
You never met him?
I never met him.
That's extraordinary.
I was in the same room.
Yeah, and you were on the same continent for the next 2 decades. It's extraordinary, that, isn't it? Well, and of course the history of that is one of the most extraordinary growth stories in technology, or whatever one wants to call it, in human growth. The beginnings of the web in Cern, Switzerland, where you were working as a computer scientist, and kind of beyond your imagining. When did you start to realize that this thing, yes, it had taken off. There were computer enthusiasts in San Francisco and elsewhere who were connecting via these protocols, the hypertext transfer protocol that everybody soon got used to, HTTP, with its colon and slashes and all those keystrokes you made us go through in the early days. When did you realize, though, that this was more than just a small addition like Janet and Gopher and FTP and all the other protocols of the early days of the web, but that would actually become the window, the portal that everybody would use to utilize the worldwide, to utilize the internet?
So it's really hard actually to answer that question, because it wasn't as though there was one particular hockey stick moment. People talk about when they realize, oh my goodness, this is exponential. Well, but trouble is, it was exponential, but it was the growth of the first server. It went up from, if you look at the plot, you get a hockey stick of going from 10 to 100. But the next year it goes from 100 to 1,000. And the next year it goes from 1,000. So
you have to have it logarithmically so you can contain it in the same graph. So
when you put it on a logarithmic scale, then
yes.
it's straight as an arrow.
Yes.
So that you realize, we're onto something here. Yeah. But very exciting, very thrilling to realize that you're into it.
Yes.
You have to make sure it doesn't crash. Like plenty of things go like this. Oop.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem, like the Gopher protocol grew exponentially and then crashed because they'd made a mistake.
And the mistake they made is a very revealing one. It wasn't a technical mistake; it was a human mistake. And perhaps you can say what that was, because it's the mistake you didn't make.
The mistake was that the Gopher protocol made was that they said there may possibly be a royalty payout. You might have to pay for running the Gopher system if you're non-profit, but only if you're for profit. Not if you're using the Gopher client, only if you're using Gopher. But in some, it's possible.
Yeah.
Under some circumstances, there may be fees payable. Yeah. And so that people ran away from the Gopher.
And it's just simply the idea, even if they didn't themselves have to pay, it suddenly became a different entity, didn't it? Whereas the web was always open.
So they ran to me and said, Tim, we really need to make sure that CERN won't say the same thing. So we got a declaration from CERN.
Yes, because it wasn't entirely up to you, because you'd done it on CERN's time, the Centre for European Nuclear Research, where you were working. And were finally persuaded, weren't they, not to own the copyright?
Yes, 1993, they made that declaration that it was going to be the web would be free.
I remember with some pride a couple of things. One was I wrote my own website in '94. And
good job.
Just before HTML2 came out, so I couldn't use frames for any nerds out there who might remember those days. But I was terribly excited by it, and I had a counter, all those CGI things they had. Yes, exactly. But the Daily Mail got hold of it, and they showed us a photograph of the page, and put underneath that this. This is a web address, which really annoyed me because, as you know, with URLs, or indeed your preferred, what's your preferred name for them? Identifiers. You preferred to, yes, the URL that, is the label that everyone uses for their website. Uniform resource locator is a very ugly phrase, isn't it? So you're probably right. An identifier is nicer. But anyway, I had, I think, the first website ever printed on a British newspaper. So I was very excited by that. And then a couple of years later, I won the Liptonice Award for Website of the Year. Imagine. I know. I've still got it. It's still got it. Oh, gosh. Those were the days. But then that was an innocent time when you would use a text editor just to write your code, such as it was. And it was easy, though. It was for everyone.
Where was which computer did you
This
have?
Was
that?
a Mac.
And so did you have your Mac in your home linked to the internet?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and via telephone, incredibly expensive business, and very slow. I'd never had an Ethernet connection or university style connection that was available then. And it was thrilling. But I also had a Next Cube because I was such a fan of Steve Jobs, and I got to know him quite well, unlike you, unfortunately. And I had, and I still got it. And I keep meaning to say to you, if I bring you the optical disc, they had these little optical discs that you slid in. Could you put the code in, the exact code, so I could have a clone of your cube in my house? So it would be like having the first, rocket locomotive or something. It would be, but then that would probably be bit naughty because your copy must be the only one in the world, really, surely, isn't it? Of the code, you must have your original disc.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Have you given it to Bletchley or something?
There is a project to recreate the original files. I did an NFT of the files are on the web, but I don't have the original disc. And those optical discs, they were a great idea in a way, but they didn't work very well.
No, and they were very noisy and clunky, weren't they?
And so they were one of the things which let down the Next. Yeah. So the Next failed. It did.
Although, in a sense, its success was that Steve understood that the best operating system for networking was Unix, And so when
He took
Apple
that
was
back.
on the ground and its inventory was stocked high and everybody was laughing and saying to me as an Apple fan, you're going to have to go to hobby shops to keep your up because the firm is going under. In the last desperate act, they offered Steve the chance to come back as the new boss again and bought the Unix software of Next, which then turned into Apple's operating system
macOS.
X, macOS, which has been the basis of its triumph ever since. So it is a part of a thread in technological history, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really important.
One I'm really grateful for, because really it was such a neat machine to use. It just took me a few weeks to put together something that on another computer would have taken a month.
It's an incredible thought. Incredible thought. Now, I suppose I was at a conference not long ago and I was asked to talk about democracy, which is not exactly a subject I can regard myself as an expert in, but I posited this thought that if in this room here or in a conference hall, stage left entered the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, the Prime Minister of Italy. There they are, the leaders of the free world. I'm excluding Trump for obvious reasons when I tell you. And on the other side of the room, in came Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison. Where would people look? Oh my God, look. That's where the charisma is. That's where the energy is. That's where the power is. Those suited leaders of countries look pale and empty next to these figures here, because essentially we are now living in an oligarchical technocracy. And in America, certainly, and probably in Britain, anybody who stands for power, runs for office, who suggests guardrails and regulations to control AI and social media will be squashed, will be killed by the data flows and the information and the algorithms that are controlled by those people who are all libertarians and who are all anti-regulation. They are like Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie. They squash the unions. They squash any kind of suggestion that they should be controlled. Do you think that aside from the technical things, this is now becoming a political nightmare for the West?
So we are in a strange and different state when the world is run by the very rich, and in particular by the big companies, as you say. In some cases, you can point to companies, and sometimes sometimes you can point to individuals. And in fact, so meanwhile, if you go back to some people have suggested that for AI we should have we should in fact have some big international organization that run by something like the UN, something like CERN.
Yes, or a World Bank in a sense, because it's almost like currency.
CERN was put together in order to when there was a concern that nuclear power was being developed, and it was something very powerful, and it had to be done by a bunch of scientists in a way which is which is for the human good, not for the human bad.
Right.
So for nuclear power and nuclear weapons, but the response was to create CERN. So I was lucky enough to be able to have some time working there, 10 years working there, and now some people are suggesting that AI should be done by that. So the leading technical, if we're going to have a AI developed which is smarter than a person, then it should be done in a place where it can be controlled and where it can be open, everybody can see what's going on. Yes, so we are very, very far from that. But so because of the situation which you've outlined, we're not. I can't see a way for us to get to a CERN for AI.
Because in the late 40s and 50s, there was a time when there was a need and a desire for great institutions. There was a belief in institutions.
Following the Second World War, indeed.
Now there is no belief in institutions. NATO, the World Health Authority, the organization, the UN, they're all emasculated by Trump and by the populists who are rising. And the difference, I suppose, in the past is that the rich then may have owned steel and construction and transport, but the rich now are controlling information.
Yeah.
And that's much more powerful thing to own, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose they controlled it back in the day was of newspapers, and then of TV.
Exactly, there was that.
And so,
yeah. So, but you're still hopeful.
I'm still hopeful that we can we can find people together who will work together to make sure that AI is developed. For
Yes, and is it a way of using AI to make AI good rather than ignoring it and trying to fence it off? Presumably. Yeah, that's the key, isn't it?
No, I'm an optimist about AI.
Yeah,
I just think that and there's thousands of ways in which AI can be useful.
Yeah,
and yes, some jobs may be at stake, but there are thousands of ways in which AI can be used and to make people's lives better. There is the issue that if you make it something that's a lot bigger than you, smarter than you, then it's smarter than you.
Yeah, the various levels that you hit of AGI to, and if AGI goes exponentially or almost instantaneously to SI, artificial superintelligence, people will be worried.
Exactly.
Yes, and it's almost like a religion. There are sort of Catholics and Protestants and Puritans and atheists when it comes to AI. There's a whole selection of different views, but I think your point is that you use technology to solve the problems that technology gives. You don't just turn your back on it. And you yourself are working, for example, on something that maybe you can just explain a little. It's a difficult thing to explain. You do it beautifully in the book. The solid technology, this idea of these siloed personal identity pods. Perhaps you could explain that and how it's going at the moment as a technology, how it's unwinding.
So it's all very exciting right now because of the spirit of open source developers who are developing behind this the solid protocol. Yeah. So what it is with Solid, you have control of your own data. So at the moment, there are things where people they may not realize, but in fact they're frustrated because for example, you have your friends on Facebook and you have your colleagues on LinkedIn. And those are actually different worlds because Facebook and LinkedIn don't talk to each other. You can't share your photographs on Facebook with your LinkedIn colleagues. You have to move all the photographs to LinkedIn and so on. So, but there are some things in the world which work better. For example, calendars. Calendars, there are protocols. Calendars on the internet. When you bring up your calendar, somebody asks you whether we can do lunch on Thursday. Then you bring up your calendar, and it brings in all of your work calendar. It brings in all of your work calendar, your home calendar, calendars of your favorite bands and so on.
Yes, and subscription ones of sporting dates and so on.
So with calendars you get, it works very well because the protocol out there allows you to use data from all the different parts of your life at the same time. And Solid is about saying all of your life should be like that, your social media in particular. You should be able to share things with anybody. And Solid protocol is technical thing, came from the lab at MIT, and it's when you write programs using it, then you write programs which respect individuals and give them power again.
So they have the control over all the different information that may have come through.
So they can share it with whoever they like.
Yes.
They can share the medical stuff with their doctor. They can share it with their cousin.
If you're getting one thing in from Apple Health and another thing in from Facebook, it doesn't mean that Apple Health and Facebook can talk to each other. It's only
It's only when you're in this
pod,
with the system, it brings all the data into the same data wallet, as we call it. Yes.
And I guess that's sort of what agentic AI is suggesting it can do on your behalf, but much less securely, presumably.
Well, with agentic AI, then, we've we've built an AI that uses a data wallet. We called it Charlie. Because I wrote about 10 years ago.
It was
a
thought experiment of yours, wasn't it, Charlie?
I blogged about it. Yeah. And the thing, supposing you had an AI which would work for you. It didn't work for Amazon. It didn't work for Apple. Supposing it worked for you. And so that AI, Charlie, I wrote about, but now we've built it. And so it turns out if it does work for you, it will. If you give it your Strava data, if you give it your bank data, then it understands a lot about you. And so when you ask it what sort of running shoes to buy, it becomes very, very perceptive in understanding.
Because it can access your health, it knows your age, it knows your weight, it knows so much about you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But only it does, and it doesn't.
So
secure.
It does it. Yes. The crucial thing about Charlie is that it works for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for anybody else.
That's brilliant. And you're excited about how this is going now.
Yeah.
When I read it in your book, I immediately thought, I want a part of this. So I went online and saw that it was, at the moment, it's only for corporate level people to get interested in. But eventually I will be able to log on and get my own Charlie, as it were. That sounds like a bit unfortunate. Yes.
Yes.
But I will.
Yes.
And how far away are we from that day, do you think?
So I think in the next 5 years, then hopefully we will see this technology ubiquitous.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I think it's been wonderful talking to you. I can't recommend your book highly enough. It's a very exciting, romantic, intellectual adventure. And I think it opens a side of technology and of humanity that is needed now more than ever before. So it's always an enormous pleasure to
thank you so much for doing the audiobook.
It was a joy. I mean it. Thanks.